Hi, my name is Daniel. The game recording with the DGT board is a great feature. However, there are three major pitfalls you can run into when using the board only intuitively. That will be a nuisance and cost you time. Games you think have been recorded will not be recorded. That happened to me. In this video, I'll show you how to avoid that unnecessary experience. Finally, the board is underestimated for its capability to show what was going on in a game. I will show you how to use this essential capability. Now, powering the board. The DGT board is an electronic device, and of course, for such a device to do something, it must have power. The boards have no integrated logic that they turn on automatically when moves are played on the board. That would be nice, but it's not there. So the board needs to be manually powered to record moves. That is the first pitfall. Before you play with the board, make sure the board is really powered. Otherwise, no moves are recorded. Nothing. Not one move. For the USB boards, because they have no built-in battery, you must power the board by connecting it to a power source with the USB cable. The Bluetooth board has a built-in battery. For recording games, you must turn it on. Here, no cable connection is needed. Now for the USB board. You have several options to power the board. First, the one I like most. If you have an Android mobile, you can simply connect it with your board with a USB-C to USB-C cable to power the board. Such cables are available everywhere. You can connect the board with your computer to power it. Any standard USB cable will do. Please be aware that if you configured your computer to go to standby when closing the lid, do not close the lid while playing. You can also use the power adapter to charge your mobile for powering the board. I don't think that should ever be necessary, but to be complete, you can power the board with an always-on power bank, as I show here, for example. Such an always-on power bank will always supply power, contrary to a conventional power bank, which turns off if power usage is very low. Here I have a conventional power bank, like for recharging the mobile. You cannot use such a conventional power bank to power the board. The conventional power bank will turn off after some time for the low power usage of the board. It's a pity that there is no light confirming that the board is powered, as for the Bluetooth board. However, at least with the DGT 3000 clock, you can check if the board is powered. For that, connect the clock. If a double arrow shows at the top middle of the display, the board is powered. Now, if I disconnect the mobile, you can see that the double arrow vanishes after a short time. So now the board is not powered and will not record any moves. Now for the Bluetooth board. To power the board, just turn it on. To be sure the board is powered, check if the light shines steady or is blinking slowly as here. The color does not matter. In this case, the board is powered. By the way, the battery lasts about 20 hours, so very long, and is slow charging. It takes about 8 hours to fully charge it. You can also play when charging the board. By the way, with a long press on the power button, you can switch off the board while charging for faster charging. Then the light will blink fast. In this case, of course, you cannot record games. The board can be turned on again by a long power press. Recording games. Here comes the second pitfall. you must put the pieces in the starting position to record the moves. Otherwise, nothing is recorded. Now, for example, here I start the game with the black queen being misplaced. So a few moves are played. And now black realizes the queen is displaced. So black corrects the queen and makes a move. White makes another move, but here the board recorded nothing. Technically the board needs the starting position like a command to start recording. So here it never got the command to start recording at all. So there is really nothing recorded. So if you now continue for 50 more moves, none of these moves will be recorded. Now I will record again. The light is blinking, so the board is powered. The pieces are in the correct starting position, also knight and bishops are correctly placed. That is often a problem. So now you can move the pieces as you like by lifting up and putting down, or by sliding, or you can also use a combination of the two. That works fine. Now the board does not have a detection sensor for checking if a piece was released. So if you move a piece and release it, according to the FIDE rules, the move is done and you cannot change it anymore. But for the board, if your opponent did not make his move, you can still change the move and it will record it properly. Of course, you have to discuss with the opponent if that is okay, but for the board, that is no problem. There is no time limit. Still now, as long as the opponent did not make the move, I can change the square of the bishop. Pieces falling down is no problem. So for example, if I displace a few pieces and if I correctly re-establish the position, the board will have no problem with it and record the moves correctly. Now that was actually a bad move, so taking back is no problem, but you must do it in the correct order when taking back multiple moves. So let's say, for example, we play a few more moves. Now, let's say you want to take back multiple moves, so I must undo the moves in the reverse order. So first the bishop, and then the pawn, again the bishop, again the pawn. Now black can make another move, and it will be recorded correctly. If you don't do the take back in the correct order, there will be problems, but I will show that later. Now let's assume the player agreed to a draw, the game is finished. Now if you want, you can turn off the board. So the board is turned off and the moves will remain stored on the board. The board has a permanent storage like a USB stick, which does not need power to keep the moves. So later you can turn on the board and import the moves to the computer. Now importing games. Importing is a big word. What we actually do is just we copy the games which are saved on the board to the computer. For importing we need DGT LiveChess. I have it installed here and connected the board. For details how to do so, please check in the video about playingonchess.com. There are detailed instructions for doing so. So now I turn on the board turn it off before. And now the light is steady green, which means we have a connection to the computer. If you have the USB board, you just need to connect the board with the computer using the USB cable. Now the import. Here comes the third pitfall. I click here on games. Now I would expect my game here, but I see the last game I have here. Is not actually the game I played. So the game we just played is not here, it would be at the bottom of the list. So that is the third pitfall. If you want to import the game, you must set back the starting position. That will be a command for the board to finish recording, and then you can import the game. Now you see there's a new entry added in the games list. That is now our game. One note about the created on here, that is actually the timestamp the game was imported and not the game was played. It's not possible to get to a point in time that the game was played. That's a bit of a pity. If the game was played like a week ago, that information is not available. What you see here is just the point in time we imported the game. So now we can look at the game. We can click through the moves and so on. And well, what I find most important is that it's possible to export PGN. And with the PGN, of course, there's a lot you can do. You can import it on LiveChess or to whatever software you're used to, analyze the game, or you can add it to a library and so on. Now, like when you import photos, it will only import the games from the board not yet imported, so it will not double import games. If you install DGT LiveChess on another computer, it will import the games on the board again, but only the games on the board. So you have about 10 games on the board. So you will not have the full history in case you played many games. All DGT LiveChess data, including the imported games, are located in this folder. So if you ever reinstall your notebook, for example, and delete the data for that, all games imported on the computer are gone, and on the board there are only about 10 games, so you will lose many games. This information is not stored in the cloud or so if you need these games, just make a backup of this folder from time to time. Now for the board capacity, you cannot delete the games on the board, which I think is actually a good thing, so you cannot accidentally delete games. The board stores about 500 moves for each player, so that are about 10 full games. When the board is full, the recording still works fine. It will just delete the oldest move when recording a new move. Now the advanced chapter, saying that the board is recording moves is actually a bit misleading. The board records all the movements of the pieces, and from that it will try to reconstruct what moves have been played. So the movements are recorded and the moves are actually reconstructed. In practice, this reconstruction is not always possible. In every game it can happen that if the player, for example, displays pieces and do not restore them correctly, that you cannot reconstruct the moves anymore. And I will show you what to do in this case. Now I will make a simple example where move reconstruction is possible. I play a few moves. And now I move my bishop forth and back. And now we see how DGT LiveChess will look at the game. For this, I will put back the pieces. Now we have the new entry. And now we can look at the game, and we see that the move reconstruction was fine. We have bishop c4. Top, we move the bishop a bit back and forth. So in the history, here we see the detailed movements. And if we click here, we go back. You see the bishop started on f1, went to b5, back to c4. We put it up, put it down on e2, finally moved it to c4. So we don't need this detailed information for this case because the move reconstruction was successful. But if it's not successful, this information is extremely helpful. In our case, when the move reconstruction is not possible. So I made up an example, which is not realistic, but demonstrates the problem. Now let's assume white wants to move the queen to e2, but a bit carelessly just displaces the knight. And, well, it puts back the knight incorrectly on g3. Now the players do not notice and they play on. Black makes another move, white makes another move. Now let's see how DGT LiveChess sees this game. So I've put back the pieces and imported the game into DGT LiveChess. And as we can see here, the move reconstruction only worked until knight c6. Now, if we go on the question mark, we see other things are happening. And we actually see what happened. And on the history tab, here you have the detailed information. And so now we see the queen was lifted, the knight was lifted, queen was put on e2, and knight put back on g3. Next move, knight to f6 from black. Next move from white, knight to c3. Now this is putting back the pieces. So in this way, even if you don't have all moves, so the move reconstruction did not work for the game, still on the history tab you can reconstruct everything what happened in the game. And that is really a great feature the board is providing, and I hope this will help you to use it. Resuming 3 pitfalls to avoid. Make sure to power your board, double check the starting position, set up the starting position before importing a game. And last but not least, if your imported game is missing moves, check the history tab. It will usually show everything what happened in the game.